Hi, Fran Torsen here. We're going to take a look at a complete webinar blueprint from soup to nuts. We're going to be talking about a live webinar. There are two different types of webinars. There are live webinars and evergreen webinars or automated webinars. For the purposes of this blueprint, we're going to talk about a live webinar. We're going to talk about pre-webinar preparations, about all of the mechanics of a live webinar, about the planning, tracking your results, and post-webinar activities and ways you can leverage your results from there. So let's start with the pre-webinar activities and what we do. The first thing, of course, is to consider exactly what your topic is. And what type of audience you want to reach. Real estate, tends to be a one-size-fits-all sometimes, but take a look at your topic and decide what niche you want. Are you going to be working with first-time home buyers? Do a first-time home buyer webinar, or something about HUD homes, maybe staging your home, financing. There are all kinds of topics. Define your audience, and then decide whether or not you want to do it alone or co-present with somebody else. If you're going to co-present, line up your guest. You may want somebody to help with questions and answers, and one of the first things you want to do in the pre-webinar stages is to sync your schedule with your guests and make sure that everybody's available and everybody knows exactly what to do. Sometimes it can be a little bit daunting if you're working on a webinar alone and you're handling the technology and you're trying to interact and answer questions and do a lot of other things associated with engagement. And working with a guest or a co-presenter is a really, really neat thing to do. You decide on the date and time. Give yourself some time to schedule it in advance. Probably at least a couple of weeks is a good idea. Decide how long it's going to be. Good rule of thumb for webinars is anywhere from 45 minutes to an hour. That's about as much time as you're going to have to really keep somebody's attention, and people don't want to spend a whole lot more than that unless you are doing something and going very, very deep on a subject. But for the good rule of thumb is about 45 minutes to an hour. And in the pre-webinar stages, you want to also consider your marketing and outreach. Are you going to use your blog? That's a really great way to talk about it. Start to generate some buzz. Start to introduce the topic into the conversation. Do you have a squeeze page? A squeeze page is a page where people will be signing in and leaving their name and email address. Again, this is a really great way to build an email list. Super duper way to build an email list, and then you can build up some communication and a campaign around that. If you have a newsletter, certainly it's a great idea to work with some announcement in your newsletter. Influence scoring. Influence scoring is a way that you can actually determine who it is who's signing into your email list and what those people are doing online. There are ways that you can measure the influence scores of everybody who comes to your squeeze page and gets on your email list. And if you have that ability, you can take a look at that and you can gauge that and engage the people who are the most active and the most viral online. It's a real great thing to do in pre-webinar stages. And of course, to use social media, leverage that across all of the platforms where you're engaged. Facebook is a great place with your Facebook fan page. Is a great place to issue invitations and chatter. LinkedIn has an events announcement facility, so you may want to do it over there. That's a very professional community, and that may work. And if you are engaged in any niche forums, if you are engaged with consumers at Trulia or engaged with consumers at Zillow, then that becomes a really great place to talk about it. You can also reach out in mobile, in mobile format. You were using SMS text messaging, and with mobile types of websites. So those are ways that you can work with your pre-webinar preparations and up to the day of the event. And the day of the webinar, the live webinar, there are a number of things to think about. All right. One, and critically important, is the platform selection. What platform are you going to use to do your webinar? If you have a platform already, you've no doubt done some vetting, but there are a lot of different platforms to consider. In our webinar, in our full-day webinar event, and our in-depth webinar training, of course, we're going to be going over all of these one at a time, and these are some of the platforms we'll be talking about. GoToWebinar is a very, very popular platform in the real estate space. It's rather easy to use. It's the one that I'm using right now, and it's very, very scalable depending upon how many seats you want. WebEx is another very, very good service. WebEx is pretty much the gold standard of webinar technology. It also tends to be the most expensive. If you have access to a WebEx system, that's great. Microsoft has a live meeting format. I'm seeing a lot of that in government agencies right now. That's an interesting thing. Instant Teleseminar is another place. It's also very, very reasonable. People are using that for both webinars and teleseminars. That's good for audio or video or both. They give you instant replays. There's a new live webinar platform called Stealth, and they are coming into the space from the Evergreen webinar product community, and I haven't seen them, but I understand they have excellent support, and I am encouraged to hear that some people are very excited about starting to work with them. And then there is Yugma, which has been around for quite a while. I've used that. They also have a free version. Yugma also has a Skype add-in, and Yugma definitely is something to take a look at. And again, we'll be taking a look at all of these in greater depth in the training we're doing, but I just going to give you an outline here. The other thing that you will be doing for your live webinar is collecting registrations, and this is critical because, again, you're going to be collecting the registrations, name and email address, at least, of people who will be attending your event. So, think about that a little bit. Think about how many you want to be attracting, how many people will be attending your webinar. And a lot of that will have to do with the platform you have and the number of seats that you can accommodate. Platforms range from less than 25, and on some of the free ones, up to 25 to 50, so that you can accommodate that many people in one sitting. You may go up to 100, you may go up to 500, or even 1,000. A lot of real estate agents will be very, very comfortable in that lower range, especially considering that they will probably be recording the information and sharing it again. How much information do you ask for when you collect the registrations? Well, the less you ask for, the more registrations you'll get. There's a rule of thumb that for every single data field you require, you will lose 10 to 20% of your registration. So, name and email alone, registration is probably going to get you the most registrations, unless you just ask for email. But I will typically ask for name and email. You may ask for their address. The only time that I really see people having good results when you're asking for address is if you're giving something, providing information, and it's extremely valuable, and they're not likely to get that someplace else. That will likely yield an address for you. Other than that, that's really, you're probably, just risking losing the registration altogether. You can ask for their phone number. I'll tell you what, I've had success with phone numbers. If the phone number is tied into an alert system, and there's some notice that makes it optional, and it says something to the effect that, please, insert your telephone number if you would like to be notified about the webinar on that day, and you may send out a couple of alerts about that, so that becomes a possibility. The other thing about registrations is the value of the survey is a very, very valuable tool. So you may want to survey your respondents and ask them some questions that will help you deliver information that is really suited and tailored to their exact needs. You may want to give them a survey to gauge their knowledge about a topic. If you're talking about first-time home buyers, or you're talking about that process, you may want to ask questions, along the lines of qualification. Have you been qualified for a mortgage yet? Do you know how much you can spend? Do you have a lender, things like that. So that becomes a very, very good thing you can do with the survey. Copywriting is something to think about when you're working with a mechanic, because of course you're going to be, all of these elements and everything that involves words involves some type of discussion. Your webinar needs a title, and there really is a, very, very serious consideration to a title. You want a title that's going to be hooky. You want a title that's going to be benefits driven. And the best titles for webinars, as a rule of thumb right now with leading internet marketers, is to keep it less than 140 characters. It's kind of like a Twitter post. So if you can keep your title in character length less than a Twitter post, make it hooky and make it benefits driven, you will have better luck driving people to sign up. Body text again should be descriptive, should be relevant to the subject. It should be as hooky as you can and have as many benefits. Talk about the results, talk about the end game, talk about what people are likely to learn and what they can do with that. And then photos. You want to have some photos on your page, probably your logo, your company logo, and pictures of your presenters. If you have a host and a co-host, those are good pictures to have on your page. And you might want to work with them ahead of time. Reminders and alerts. You definitely want to be able to have something in place so that you can tell people, remind them that the webinar is coming up. Probably remind them by email the day before, and remind them, an hour or so before. Some, not all, some of the platforms have built-in autoresponders so that you can make that, a function of the webinar. So when you title it, when you schedule it, when you do all of that online, there are autoresponders built in, and you can use those. If you have your own autoresponder system, if you're using something like, or if you're using Aweber or GetResponse or Constant Contact or MailChimp or your own responder, then you can set that up, separately so that people will have an email alert. You can also, again, use mobile SMS text messaging to alert, and that's a very, very good thing to do, because people always check their text. People don't always check their email. The email open rates are not extremely high. They're about 8 to 11% for the most part, and probably 80 or 90%, or even 95% of people who get the text messages will check them. So if you can build in a mobile SMS alert system into your reminders, that would be terrific. I think it's a great idea. When you're conducting your webinar, you consider your presentation mode. Some of the more popular methods for presenting are PowerPoint. I use that a lot. You can use PowerPoint on a Mac or a PC. People who are using Macs, some people prefer Keynote over PowerPoint. Keynote is a very, very neat tool. Prezi is a little bit more new age, a little bit more free form, and that's also a very, very popular and very, very neat and creative presentation tool. You can go live on the web with some of these platforms, but not with all. If being on the web live is important, then that's going to be a feature that you want to consider when you choose your web platform, because not all of the platforms will let you do that. You can do mind mapping. That's another nice, easy way to present. What I'm doing right now with the blueprint is I'm doing that in a mind mapping program, and I like that myself. I've been doing more and more mind mapping. I've been learning on some really neat platforms where presenters are using mind mapping, and I think that's a great thing to do to offer a structured discussion about any kind of a topic. Webcam, if you want to have a physical kind of a presence where your visitors and your registrants can see who you are, they can see your face, they can see a video of you with your webcam, then that is also possible on many of these, well, not many, but on some of the platforms. You can do that on WebEx. You can do that now on GoToMeeting. They're just coming out of beta on that. So, working with a webcam is something that's, more and more possible. And again, that's a way to keep people interested. It's a way to personalize your your presentation. It's a way for people to connect with you a little more personally. Your engagement, how do you engage with your audience? Well, there are a number of ways of engaging, and it's very, very important to engage and use some forms of engagement so that people don't get bored, so they don't turn off. Online chat is one of those. Online chat, online Q&A. People can ask questions. Now, with a Q&A, you can handle that a couple of different ways. You can collect questions during the webinar and then answer them during a question and answer period. You can also collect those questions and prepare some kind of a document or follow-up webinar later, or a teleseminar later. Or you can have somebody working with you, a co-presenter or somebody who can actually be reading the Q&As, possibly engaging with the questioners on the chat and answering the questions, in live time so that everybody can see it. Or they can read you the questions and you can have a discussion. So there are lots of ways about handling questions and answers, and we'll be talking a lot about that again in the program. You can engage in email. It probably isn't the best way. I do know some presenters who do it very, very effectively, though. They prefer to receive their questions by email, and they will actually, some of them, be working with an additional computer where they can monitor their email and answer email questions. Some of the platforms have built-in polls that you can design in advance, so you can poll your audience and you can see how many people would respond one way versus another. If you're talking with home buyers, you may want to see how many people in your audience are renting, versus owning their own home. You may want to poll investors about their experience. Have they ever owned an investment property? Are they landlords? Do they intend to buy an investment property to flip it or to hold it long term and rent? You can ask all kinds of questions in polls. And you can also have contests. Contests are very, very engaging. Contests are also things that can just entice people to engage. I've seen people use Twitter very effectively and say and have a contest during a webinar and say, okay, at the top of the hour or at a half-hour intervals, we're going to give a free gift to the best tweet about such and such, and then ask the people to use a certain type of hashtag that will identify the webinar and the presenter. And it's a way of getting viral. They'll do the same thing with Facebook fan pages. Sometimes contests can be automated, and there's a great tool that I've been using lately that will actually take my registrants and then do a random selection. So if I have several hundred registrants who have joined a webinar, I can just push a button and select as many prize winners as I want. I can do that online or offline, and that's a pretty neat thing. It's kind of a virtual fishbowl with business cards, and that's pretty neat. Or you could do a best picks type of contest, where you are picking the best of something that you've asked people to participate. You may have had a promotion asking for people to write a blog post, or for people to submit pictures about something, or videos, and you can award winners of contests who have produced some really creative content. The other thing you want to consider is how you're going to record, and I think it's always a good idea to record webinars. A lot of the webinar platforms have a built-in recording facility, and often they work, but they don't always work. So, plan B needs to be, you need to have a secondary plan for recording if you really want to have the recording, because every now and then, even with the best of intentions and when everything seems like it's working, things will just not stop working, and you may have a really terrific webinar, and it's a real shame when you have a great webinar and wonderful engagement and everything is going great, and boom, you find out that you don't. I've had that happen. It used to happen a lot more in the past. The technology is getting a lot better, I must say it's getting lots and lots better, and but it's still good to have a plan B. Plan B is often something like Camtasia, that is a recording, a screen capture device that you can run in parallel to whatever the recording function is with the platform. Or you may have a couple of people running that for you. So recording, we'll get into that in depth, but that is definitely something to consider, when you're putting together a live webinar and part of that. The other thing you want to talk about, again, is some planning. If you want to plan ahead, what are you going to be giving away? You may have some posts and some shares leading up to the webinar, and if you do that, you may want to consider what you would like to give away. You may have some videos, some really, really good videos that would have some valuable content that you can share. You may have some PDFs. You may have software, whatever it is you're dealing with, checklists. Consider what you want to give away and think about that in advance. And then how are you going to get viral? Again, we're going to talk a little bit about that. We talked a little bit about that in marketing. And getting viral, involves sharing, inviting people to share and making sharing incentivized. Perhaps offer another bonus or another gift if people will share information about your webinar with their own spheres of influence. The other way to get viral is by broadcasting and by sending a note to your list. Again, take a look at that social influence scoring so that you can gauge who in your community and who on your list is the most likely to share. And, that becomes very, very obvious. The scores, social influence scoring is a number. And when you take a look at a social influence score, you have a number. If it's a high number, you will likely, be able to take a look at somewhat of an online dossier. And there are some really, really good tools for doing that. And again, take a look at social media, which is just, more and more part of people's lives. And then we start to talk about tracking. And again, we want to measure our results. We want to know that what we're doing is working. We want to know that we're bringing people into our sales funnels, that they are going to be engaged when they get there, that they find what they have, what we have to offer, that they find it valuable, that they find it valuable enough that they will continue to be engaged, and at some point in time, in the not too distant future, enter into some type of a transactional relationship with us. So tracking tracking people is extremely important. We want to know who exactly registered for the event. Who registered. By the way, in most cases, you're going to, not everybody will show up at the actual event. And the good rule of thumb for attendance is about 60%. So if you have, let's say you've got a 50-seat facility, a 50-seat webinar, you can probably take as many as 100 registrations and still be in pretty good shape, because not everybody attends, and overbooking really is important if you really want to maximize your attendance. When you take a look at who attended, it's nice to know how long people stayed and when they left your webinar. So having a platform that gives you that kind of information is very, very helpful. And again, who didn't show up? And if people don't show up, be in a position to message them and say, I'm sorry you couldn't make it. Here's a link to a replay. And again, you can have different messaging for all kinds of people, whether they attended, whether they didn't, if they left early. You can take a look at that and then, tailor your communications and your messaging based on that. So, the follow-up messaging will be different for the people who attended than it will be for the people who did not attend. The same messaging for both doesn't work. It's not going to yield the same results. So if you want to really maximize your influence and your results with the people who attended, you've got, you can reference what they've already heard. That's not going to work if they didn't show up. So for the people who didn't show up, the whole idea is to get them to a replay so that they can share it at a later date. Some of the post-webinar thinking. Again, think about the replay and how you want to post the replay. There are different ways of posting it. Some people like to post it and they will post it only for a short period of time, which is, strategically very, very sound reasoning, because there's a sense of urgency and attached to that. And, if somebody can only has 48 hours to look at a replay, and it's something that matters to them, they're more likely to do it than if you put it up and said, come and watch it anytime you want. Well, if you have something that people can watch anytime they want, they may never get there because there is no urgency. You can take that replay and you can actually create another kind of a webinar that's called an evergreen webinar. And we're going to be going into great depth on evergreen webinars, because evergreen webinars are absolutely smashing ideas right now, and they're being used very, very successfully to generate lots and lots of leads. You can create some wonderful engagement. The technology is absolutely awesome, and we'll be talking about that at great length. So, working with a live webinar first, and then taking that replay and creating an evergreen webinar is something that can put your webinar system on autopilot. I mean, imagine if you did one live webinar a week, for 6 months, and you had all of those replays. My goodness, you could have, replays and evergreen webinars going, every single day, and generating new leads and engaging people in your market. You may want to take some of these videos and syndicate them. Put them on YouTube, put them elsewhere. Juice them up, with some keywords and links to your website, or maybe to other registration forms, and do that with select videos. We'll be talking about that as well. That is definitely something to consider in your post-webinar stage. And of course, the next step, and that's that's connecting. That's connecting and taking it to the next level, and actually taking it to a point where you can enter into a transactional relationship with your registrant, where that person becomes, gets past the point of being a lead and becomes a client or a customer. That next step, taking the next step, that's part of that whole post-webinar plan. And so here we are. This is it in terms of a blueprint for what we have to look at, what we're working with the components. Again, there'll be a PDF right below the video here. There'll also be a mind map that you can open in one of your mind mapping applications, and we will see you soon with some more information.